Hello and welcome to Console Shock, Retro and Modern Gaming Chat with me, Trev, and as always, Stuart. How's it going, babes?
I love it when you call me babes.
I know you do, especially when I whisper it.
Yeah, exactly.
Really
just whisper it in my ear. That's perfect. Perfect.
Like angels dancing on my eardrums every time.
Yeah. No.
Getting a bit weird, but
exactly. Yeah, let's leave the weirdness.
Let's move on. People don't come here for weirdness, do they?
No.
Well, maybe they do, but yeah. How you doing anyway?
Yeah. Good. Just, I feel like summer's now started.
It's been a mixed bag, hasn't it? One day it's 25 degrees, and the next it's 17 and cloudy. So you put your shorts away that you had yesterday, get your jumper back out, and the next day it's nice. Last year it was literally like a heat wave, wasn't it? At this point in time, I think for a solid few weeks. Yeah,
exactly. I think we had a heat wave for one day, and then it was awful again. And of course, that one day was not a weekend. It was, we were stuck in the office and couldn't really enjoy it. And I was anyway. But it wasn't great.
Yeah. I mean, you do sort of. I know you go and do exercise and go on runs. I mean, I don't go on runs, but I like to try and do a sort of 10,000 steps kind of thing each day. So normally especially when I'm working from home, so it's not something that I can naturally do through my day. That when I am in the office, when you naturally you walk into the train station and you walk to the office, and then you maybe go out and get lunch, and you stretch your legs without really having to make a point of doing it. When I'm at home. I have to kind of, put aside a couple of hours to actually go and I often do, kind of a big walk after I've, finished work for the day. But dressing for it has been such a pain. I mean, the winter it's easy. I know I've just got to put a big coat on, and that's what I do. For a solid 3 or 4 months every day, I just wear the same thing. I haven't got to worry about, should I wear the jacket today? Should I wear? But like today was great. I could have a shorts and t-shirt, go for a walk. It was great. Like tomorrow, it'll be 20 degrees and cloudy, maybe raining. It might be a bit too chilly to wear shorts and t-shirts. So I've got to, have something else, and then I might have to take an umbrella. And it's so annoying. It's really annoying. You can't plan for anything.
No, it's not good. Not good.
And the forecast is often different at the moment, isn't it? The day before. So you get up the morning, the next morning when it's maybe you saw before you went to bed it will be sunny. You go to work and it's cloudy and a bit chilly. You didn't bring a jumper. You didn't bring anything to account for that. So yeah. What are we going to do?
Well, nothing we can do, isn't it? Just I don't want to say hope for global warming, but yeah.
Well, it could have done with a little bit of warming of some kind, right? So
yeah,
I'm not saying 40 degrees heat wave again, but
do you know what? No, that's too hot. I always want it to be about 23, 24. That's nice.
Yeah.
Anything more than that is awful. It's just sticky. It's not great. When you're on the trains, it's awful. So stick around that sort of temperature, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, it's like today has actually been all right temperature wise.
It's been good. I went out earlier, and it was reasonably. It was nice. It was a nice day.
Yeah, if you're doing it for the exercise, what we had today, like 22, 23, whatever it is, I think it might be actually like 24, 25 actually today. That's really nice kind of walking temperature. It's warm enough for you to be comfortable, wearing shorts and t-shirt, and you won't get too sweaty walking at a brisk pace. But like, was it last Friday? It was about 30. And God, it was just like getting to my front door and then a couple of 100 yards down the road. I was already like clammy as hell and sweaty, and I had to walk like at half the speed that I normally do. Yeah. So it took me, twice as long to get it done.
I sound like an old man sometimes, and but when I'm, it's a really hot day, and you see like a group of young lads, and they've all got their padded jackets on, their tracksuit bottoms, and they've got their like designer like jumper on or something underneath, and you look at them and going, I'm I've got trousers on and a shirt here, and I'm getting pretty warm, and they're like walking around in their padded jackets, and some of them have got their hoods up, and you're just like, Like, what are you doing? Aren't you so uncomfortable?
Yeah,
and obviously they want to look cool, but come on.
Yeah, that is absurd. It's the opposite as well. When I'm, at a football match or something in the winter, there'll always be someone sat near me with like a t-shirt on in like February or something, and I've got massive jump, often 2 or 3 jumpers and a big jacket and a scarf, and I'm probably still cold. And I'm seeing people like that, and I'm like, that's literally hypothermia is going to set in.
It's almost like a sign of pride, isn't it? You see the quintessential Newcastle fan. It's the middle of February, and they're standing in a great big beer belly, with their shirt off, and watching their team beat I don't know, Bournemouth or something, and they're just like, or on a Tuesday night, and you're like, what are they comfortable like that? Because I know my geography quite well, and I can't imagine it's ever warmer in Newcastle than where I am in the south of England. It's just not a thing, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I was in Glasgow at the end of last year in like November, and when we sort of touched down and we got to the hotel, and then we went out. Let's go and check out, the local area in the main city centre, and we looked at the temperature. It was -2, and we just left London, which was London. I mean, it was the winter, so it wasn't like warm, but it was like even London was about 7 or 8 that day, which is chilly, but you'd be all right with a decent jacket on. But we had like a whacking great big jacket on and everything, and it just went right through you. Because it was windy as well. It wasn't like you can get away with it being very cold if there's not any wind or anything, because you're kind of walking through it really. But it was insanely cold. So to sit, to sit and watch something of that sort of temperature, when you've got everything on. I need to get those. You can get these things off Amazon. They're like heated Gillet things that you can charge up, and they actually have warm membranes in them and everything. They'd be perfect for that sort of thing. But anyway, enough about the weather and
that's it. This is a gaming podcast. Remember, if anyone's still listening, this is a gaming podcast.
Yeah, supposedly we're not really showing that with what we've been talking about, but there's a few sort of things we want to talk about today. Actually, there isn't really a singular thing, but we'll start off. Actually, you actually wanted to chat about a particular thing that will also lead on to a more modern issue that's happening in the world of sort of gaming right now. But you wanted to talk about ODEs, optical drive emulators. We have mentioned them before.
I thought we'd just sort of pose the question and really discuss it through. But, optical drive emulators, you can get them for sort of Sega Saturn, PlayStation, GameCube, PS2, I think. So Dreamcast, all the major sort of DVD and CD games, game systems. But would you I think you've got one, but would you sort of buy one, download all the games, and then basically sell all your collectible physical games? Well, that's a question for you, Trev.
I mean, no, it would be my answer. I've got a couple of ODEs. I've got a PS1 ODE called the X Station, and I've got the Saturn one called the Satiator, both of which are amazing, and they're basically like flash carts, but for CD-based consoles. You just stick the ISOs of the games on each one, and they'll just play as if you're playing off a disc. Sometimes the load times will be quicker because there's no physical media being read, which is always good to have quicker load times. But they kind of work best in that era of, the 16 to 32-bit CD era. Because when you get beyond that into like Xbox and GameCube and PS2, there's kind of hard drives that you could connect to those consoles. With the Xbox, it actually had a hard drive, and there are ways that, if you mod an Xbox, you can just start putting the games on the hard drive and loading them that way. You haven't got to, take out the optical drive and replace it with something. The GameCube, you've got the SD. There's the SD card adapters that let you put games on an SD card that could either go through the memory card slot or on the network ports that sit underneath, which is pretty cool. Probably out the easiest out of all of the consoles to kind of get it's not really, it is an ODE, I guess, but switching to solid state things is probably the best way to put it, versus having to use the disc. And PS2, again, that could support hard drives, couldn't it? There was a hard drive accessory I think you could get.
Oh yeah, and you get that McBoot thing, can't you?
Free McBoot,
free
yeah.
McBoot,
and then you could,
yeah.
That's it. And you can load games off a hard drive there. So you kind of, after that, you kind of covered. I think probably it stops at the Dreamcast. I've got one for the Dreamcast as well, an optical drive emulator. And anything before that PS2 generation, cut-off point being the Dreamcast, there wasn't really hard drives or anything like that, so you would need to have some kind of an ODE. So that also includes like 3DO and CD32 and TurboGrafx CD / PC Engine CD. Saturn, PlayStation, they're all kind of in there. But in terms of, does it make you want to sell your collection? No. I mean, the good thing about the go on, yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, because a while ago I bought from you. Got one? Well, I've got the EverDrive for the Mega Drive, which I bought from you.
Yeah,
and I think that sort of thought, well, I've spent money on this now. I've got the games on there, and they're just sitting in boxes. So I think I did sell a few of them.
Yeah.
To get some sort of money back. So I think I'm on the opposite camp, and so I would want to say, obviously you got one for the PlayStation, and I'd ask you, well, hold on, what's the point of having the physical game on the shelf? But then if you've downloaded the game and you put it onto the SD card, it's all there. The press of a button, you can play this. You haven't got to go and find the game and hope the disc isn't scratched and all of that. And of course, there you've got you've got the money that's sitting there. Now, some PlayStation games might be worth £5, but some might be worth £50, £100. £200. So you go, hold on, I could, play the, download this game, play it whenever I want. It will still play exactly the same, but then I could flip the actual game, the disc. Surely that's a good idea, Trev. Surely.
Well, I'm not going to say it's a bad idea. It depends on how much. What sort of value you have from and I don't mean like monetary value, what kind of, any kind of sentimental value for your collection. You might not, and you're like, yeah, screw it, I could just get rid of these now. I mean, for me, it's about buying things. But in terms of my collection, why I have it, it was getting, physical copies of things that I wasn't able to do when I was a kid. Whether that's, there were specific games that I wanted, or just, there was a console that I'm very fond of that I want to try and go for a complete collection of. I mean, I like that. I like obviously having physical copies of things that I can hold in my hand and look at the manual and look at the disc, and that's something that I enjoy. And ultimately, there's also there is the monetary aspect you've already mentioned. So to me now, I could sell them all now and make some money, but to be honest, I'd rather keep them now. I mean, I don't really think I'm ever going to want to sell them unless I absolutely had to, but at some point, maybe they'll be so valuable as time goes by and other copies of all this stuff gets more scarce. It's actually be a kind of an investment, really. So I wouldn't really, I would rather, if I was going to sell it and it was inevitable, I'd rather wait until, the value has gone up. I mean, it might not go up. Something might happen and everything will just tank completely, but there's nothing to suggest that's going to happen. So I'm quite happy to keep this collection. No, I don't think it'll get even
I think you've actually sort of turned the argument round there, because you're saying, well, I could get the ODE, download the game, then sell the physical copy for £50. But then you might be thinking, well, actually, in a year's time, that might be worth £75, or it might be worth £100, or in 10 years, it might be worth £300. So potentially, actually, you're missing an opportunity by selling it now, where you could, in theory, sell it in 3 years' time or 10 years' time, when you potentially need the money, more for a lot more, just because I watch this YouTuber and all he ever talks about is Sega Saturn disc rot, and he loves talking about Sega Saturn and disc rot. I think it's the only system that ever gets disc rot, and so from that point of view, it's like, well, actually, it's good to have backups of these things. On the other hand, if you look after your games, potentially, more games will just get damaged. Will get, well,
it's only the same in there are other kind of, collector sort of, I don't know, groups that why do people buy vinyl when they can have 1,000 MP3s on their phone?
Well, they could
why keep? Oh yeah. Why keep a vinyl collection? Why keep a Laserdisc collection? Or people collect VHS when they can get a Blu-ray disc? There are obviously some. There's many factors to that as well that actually do happen in the video game realm as well. Like lots of movies never were released on DVD and Blu-ray that are on Laserdisc and VHS, and they're stuck there. The same with video games. In fact, it's probably a lot worse, to be honest, with video games, because movies can play, as long as there's a digital file of it somewhere, it'll probably be able to play it on, it's forward compatible for a long time, really. Whereas, a video game could be stuck on a particular piece of hardware forever, if it doesn't get re-released or remastered.
You could buy a DVD, couldn't you, from a film from the 1930s? So that's nearly 100 years later, and you could, find a film and buy it or download it somewhere. But I think, you've hit on another point is, one of the things I like watching on YouTube is, the video and Reddit is, the game room tours and the game room pictures and stuff like that. And I love seeing people's sort of setups, and they go through, all of their games, and they'll go, oh, I got this. I remember getting that a certain video market, or I bought this was I'm a big fan of collecting all of the the Tales of games, or having a little bit of story behind their sort of collection of games. And I think that's something that's is actually having the physical copies and having the games around you, sort of knowing that you own them, and there's certainly something about that and some people might have, I really like, Steven Spielberg films, so I'll have all of the DVDs of those films, or I love 80s action movies, and that's something I really, and actually in the last few weeks, going off tangent, I've really enjoyed going back and watching the Beverly Hills Cop films. Watch the new one, and then went back and watched number 1 and 2. Apparently, they didn't do a third one, but I watched 1 and 2, and then they did the fourth one. But there wasn't a third one.
Yes.
So
disavowed.
Yeah, disavowed.
I actually really like Beverly Hills Cop 3. I know people hate the whole thing. It's mostly based around a theme park, but I think it's all right. There's nothing particularly bad about it.
If it was on in front of me, I would watch it and I would enjoy it. Yeah. It to me, it didn't have that edginess, that roughness, and
no, it was more comedic and
and it was a bit more family friendly. I don't remember them going to a strip club, or anything like that in Beverly Hills Cop 3. It was more like, let's make a family fun, comedy. I would argue
like Rocky 5 is far worse than like Beverly Hills Cop 3. I was going to say like Terminator 3 is probably worse than Beverly Hills Cop 3. There's the quality of some other series franchises, the subsequent films, Alien, I quite like Alien 3, but a lot of people hate that film, so I think Beverly Hills Cop 3 is probably, could be better than a lot of those, to be honest, but that's another debate. Yeah. And it's interesting you should say that, watching other films, because on old formats, because even a DVD, really, from a DVD from like 2000 of some film, whatever film, you could still realistically, if it's not rotted or something, you could play it really on someone's probably got a device you can play it on, whether it's an Xbox Series, I think you can play a DVD. Whereas a game from 2000 that was on the PS2, you can't really play that on anything modern that you might have. So, it's that disc might have more value because it's kind of a time capsule almost. You need that hardware to be able to play this disc, and there's no digital version that I can get that can usurp the disc. So that's even another that's an element to collecting that also might be, a factor for someone. Actually, we talked about
you get the manual, you get it presented, how it's meant to be presented. Just touching on films again, it sort of reminded me of on Saturday morning, I went out for breakfast and I saw a friend of ours, and I was, hello Ben, you're right, and he came over and said, what you been up to? I said, I've just gone around the charity shops, and so at the weekend he goes to the charity shops and he opened up his bag and he had about 8 or 9 DVDs in there, and they're like, some of the charity shops do like 4 DVD or 5 DVDs for £1 or 50 pence each. They're a no-brainer, and he was just sort of picking up these classic films. And he was, I've wanted to get this. It's a really good war movie from the 1950s, all in black and white, and
he had Emmanuel and Porky's and all those nice films.
Well, exactly. I did like Porky's, but the point was he'd go out there and get all these sort of classic films. And I said, how many you got in your collection? About 800 DVDs and of all these films that he enjoys watching sort of again and again. And I thought there was something genuinely that's quite cool, getting out and getting all these classic films for sort of next to nothing, and they're all still playable. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, you could still use those, but realistically now, like a PS2 game, you're going to struggle to be able to play that. I know you've got emulators, and there's a way you could use that disc on PCSX2 on the PC, but the cost of entry there is far higher for someone that doesn't know how to use emulators or cares to bother to figure out how to use a PC to do that stuff. It's far more abstract than your Xbox does a disk drive. You slot the movie in, bang, you can play it. But getting a PS2 game running on a modern PC is far more complicated than that. So, I mean, going back to ODEs, you can have your collection, and you can also, like I do, and then also what you have in the ODE. But for me, they actually mean that you don't have to cause any wear to those games. They can literally just sit in your collection, whether you've got them stored away or they're on a shelf because you like them displayed. They can just stay there, and you can kind of keep them, in the condition they currently are. You're not adding any additional wear, or if it's a cartridge in terms of an EverDrive for a Mega Drive or a Super Nintendo, you're not causing more wear on those cartridges. You're just, you've got the ROMs on your EverDrive that you can play those games from. So they probably help for preservation as well of those original copies that they aren't getting used anymore. There might be issues with rot, but I think ODEs especially are really great. It took a long time for the CD consoles to kind of get to a level like we had with the 16-bit and 8-bit era, where those EverDrives have actually been around for quite a while. We were struggling to come up with an equivalent for those consoles that use CDs. And it's a really great way to use the original hardware without needing to dig out the discs. The price of entry is fairly high, is the only thing I would also say. I've also got the PC Engine, the Turbo EverDrive Pro, which allows you to play PC Engine CD games. You're looking at sort of between £200 and £300 for ODEs, whereas an EverDrive, they could be like £40 or £50, couldn't they? Some of the more basic ones. I'd like to see them come down in price, but it's a difficult thing to make cheaply, I think, because obviously they're a lot more complicated. The job that
I was going to ask you the question about, and this is what a lot of people, maybe fans of the 8-bit guy sort of say, is that you're getting this classic console that works fine, and then you're ripping out the CD drive like you're some sort of barbarian. And I don't get this because they sold millions and millions of them of these consoles, so chances are there will be more of them, and you're not ripping up the. I think I'd be against if this was the last Sega Saturn in existence. I wouldn't suggest ripping out the CD drive and then putting in an ODE. I don't think that's a great idea, but it's not the last one. There's they sold millions of them all around the world. So in reality, I mean, obviously you put ODs into your machine, so obviously you don't care about them, Trevor. But what's your thoughts on that?
Not. Yeah, it's a good point, but I think some of the examples you gave are pretty good. Like anyway, you've got the PlayStation 1, like the XStation I've just mentioned earlier, the one that I have, and there's 100 million of those floating around. So there's not really any, you're not destroying rare hardware at all. And there's also the fact that some of the drives in these might not work anymore. So if you're just restricting yourselves to the ones that don't work, then that's perhaps probably a good thing. And that's another way that you can do that without being destructive to the the amount that are out there. The Saturn, we talked about the Satiator. You don't need to take you don't use the disk drive at all for that. You don't need to replace it. It goes in the video CD expansion bay. So you put the Satiator in there with the SD card and you don't touch the CD drive at all. So your Saturn is it's a no-cut mod, as Bob on Retro RGB would say. You don't have to do anything, and you can still use your CD drive. And things like the Turbo EverDrive Pro that has the ODE. There is the CD drive for something like a PC Engine was a separate device that you plugged in. So I don't know if there's actually an ODE where you replace the drive in that. I don't think there is. But you don't need to, because the Turbo EverDrive Pro is basically a snazzy Hue card that can run the CD games through this Hue card. So you're not, again, it's a no-cut mod. You're not modifying anything. You're just putting a different type of cartridge into the console. Same with the Mega EverDrive Pro, which can also do Mega CD emulation. You don't need to gut a Mega CD and put an SD card reader in it. You don't need to have in fact, the Mega CD, you can put it away completely. You can run the Mega CD from this cartridge plugged into a Mega Drive as a completely vanilla Mega Drive. So you're not really impacting any kind of, you're not doing anything with regard to, butchering any precious Mega CD units. And actually, a lot of the ODEs are like that. Like I said, the PlayStation 1, again, there isn't really a good, there is the external ODE that plugged into the expansion port on the back, which isn't that great, and a lot of people complain about the issues they have with that. So in terms of a really easy and straightforward and popular thing for the PlayStation, there isn't really one. You are going to be taking out the CD drive, but again, you're talking about PS1. So, people aren't, I don't think it's one you should lose sleep over. It's difficult for me to think of one where you potentially are doing, something to a rare system. I mean, the 3DO has ODEs that you could take out the drive in, and the 3DO isn't a super common console. I wouldn't even call it mega rare, though. It's kind of in a middle, kind of a grey area.
By doing these things, you're breathing sort of life back into this console, and I'm sure an ODE would last longer than a CD, because what was it? Adam Koralik, he's a YouTuber, and he's got he's pimped out GameCube, is pimped out whatever, and they've all got HDMI ports in there. They've all got wireless controllers with them, and then ODEs built in, and you're almost like you know, it's not to the point of, you know, is there even a PS2 or is seen the GameCube left? I think it's actually the Sega Dreamcast. That's his big thing, isn't it? So he's got one with what was it? It's got a broadband adapter, and you know, it can sort of do everything. And I think he's changed the power supply on the inside as well, and you know, so I think it's a good thing, but I can understand why people get a little bit sort of like, oh, you know, you're ruining the original machine, or it wasn't meant to look like that, or it wasn't meant to be played on HDMI. You're meant to play games on discs, not have 1,000 games on one SD card. That's not how it was meant to be done. That's not how the designers originally, you know, planned for it to be. But I think they might have done it a little bit differently if they knew about, you know, HDMI technology and so on.
I mean, where do you draw the line if you're one of those kind of fundamentalists? Like, no, you're not supposed to be playing you shouldn't be, for starters, you shouldn't be, if you're playing in theirs, you shouldn't be 40. You have to be 10 years old or less. It needs to be on like a 14-inch CRT from 1984. And you know, should you be using a big screen at all? Should you, you know, be sat away from it, or sat on the floor with your legs crossed, you know, with a pile of cartridges? You know, where do you sort of draw the line with that sort of nonsense, really? So, yeah, I think that's kind of ridiculous.
One last thing on this, and then we'll move on to sort of the next subject. But I 2 or 3 years ago, I watched a YouTube video, and it wasn't a gaming one. It was actually sort of someone doing a house tour, and they were a financial, you know, an online financial guru or person. And then he showed his bedroom, and on the wall there were all these. They were like about the size of a vinyl record, and there were sort of picture frames, and inside each one, that one was a Game Boy, one was a PSP, then they had the original iPhone and something else. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. So I think I started Googling it, and I found the company, you know, admittedly in China, where this came from, where these came from. And they cost, I can't remember what they cost. So I said to Justine, my partner, I said, I love one of those for Christmas. And she's like, you know, a month or two later, coming up to Christmas, she was like, oh, which one, what was your favourite one? And I was like, oh, I might be getting this. Got all excited. So I said, oh, I love the Game Boy one. And then I think we got an email from them saying, oh, we haven't got a Game Boy, we've got Game Boy Pocket ones. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's fine. I have the Game Boy Pocket one. So it's all taken apart. It's in a frame. It's all taken apart. So you got the board, you got the front, and then it's put on a bit of cardboard on the back. And then it sort of details, oh, this is the motherboard, oh, that's the screen. So it just looks, I think it looks really cool. But what they're basically doing is getting a Mega Drive, a Game Boy, a PSP, whatever it was, taking it apart, you know, sticking it to a bit of card, putting it in the box, and selling it to some idiot on the other side of the world who paid top dollar for it. So that was me, by the way. And I was like, oh, I love it. It's on the wall. I see it every day. I really like it. But then there was this, I think I saw some videos or someone, oh, this company, they're buying, you know, all these Game Boys and things, just ripping them to pieces, sticking them on board, putting them in a frame, and selling them to some idiot in the UK. Again, that's me. And I thought, oh, actually, yeah, they got a point, haven't they? And I sort of, I told myself, oh, the one I had probably didn't work. But,
well, there's the 8-bit guy. You mentioned him already, but the 8-bit guy has had some backlash, hasn't he, for you know, taking old computers and like doing something to them or cutting the case on them, and people have been like, you can't do that. That's a rare bit of hardware. You shouldn't touch it. It needs to be perfectly preserved. And it's like, this is obviously when he's not doing videos on how to conceal a gun. But no, I don't know if he gets backlash for that. It's it's hard. I mean, they're not wrong. It's probably not a good idea to destroy, something that's rare. But at the end of the day, it's I'm not going to tell someone. I don't think there should be a law against it or anything.
I don't think there is, and I like to think that this person has gone on eBay and gone, okay, right, search broken Game Boys that are a tenner each or whatever, and bought as many as he can, stuck them in a frame on a printed board, and sells them for £100, and he's absolutely clearing up.
Yeah,
that's why I hope has happened.
And there might be like in theory, you could probably take. I mean, the board might not be working anymore. There might actually be. Well, they might have taken one that is fully working, but I think it's probably likely it's kind of ones that have been junked. And potentially, you could take some of those bits out and repurpose them into another Game Boy. The casing and stuff like that. So. It's not like it's just been set on fire or melted down, or something. So it's nothing, can't be possibly ever be used again, whether it's parts of it or the whole thing. So, I certainly don't lose sleep over that stuff. A lot of these things, certainly some of the things you mentioned, and outside of those very niche 8-bit guy computers that people get, annoyed about when he messes around with them, we're talking about things that were made in their millions, really. There'll be, plenty around long after we're gone. Certainly with something like a PS1, probably even something like a 3DO, whether they'll be working or not is another question. But I think even by that point, people will have created new motherboards for them, and people have already got replacement. Things like the Amiga community, you can have, a completely brand new motherboard that you can just put the chips on, or FPGA boards that you can sit inside an Amiga. And to be honest, it might get to the point where you've got no choice. Then, you can perfectly preserve an original unit, but to be honest, after a certain amount of time, the entire thing won't be working. So, okay, great. You've got we can have a look at the motherboard. You can't do anything. We can't turn it on. The only way you can have one that works is to have, here's an Amiga 500 from 80 years ago. It's not got the original motherboard in it anymore. The case is the same and the keys are the same, but it's got an FPGA that emulates, or simulates the original chips, because, there's no more working original motherboards anymore. And that gets to the whole question of when is it really, is it an Amiga then, really? It's just a PC that's been modified to pretend that it's an Amiga, It's the whole thing of the ship that got rebuilt thing. Is it the original? Yeah.
But that's the thing, would you rather play a Game Boy game on the original Game Boy or an analog pocket? And I'll go, actually, I might rather play it on the analog pocket.
It's probably an objectively better way to play it than an original Game Boy, where you're dealing with a bad screen and battery that will run out more quickly, and buttons might not be as good as an analog pocket. The quality, you can have an argument though. Is like, what's the right way? Again, you could get into the discussion of, well, you need to be a small child like it was meant to be played, and you should be, you're not using a modded light backlit screen. It has to be the original and everything. And you're getting a bit ridiculous at that point.
Yeah, well, I think we've gone through all the aspects of that. But one thing, I'll sort of tell you a story really. But at the weekend, I live close to Bromley, so I went into Bromley town centre, and I thought, I'll have a look in, games, see if I can pick up a game for my Xbox or something. And I went in there, and I'm not joking, only about 20% of the store had video games in it. The other 80% was cuddly toys, board games,
Funko
Pop, Prime drinks, mobile phones,
Lego, and
Lego, and I was just like, well, they haven't got anything I really want in here, and so I think I left and I wandered up to sort of CX to have a look in there. But what's your, and just for sort of people, Game is a video game store in the UK, sort of a chain that's sort of nationwide, probably similar to GameStop in the USA. But it's a real. I was really, and I'm hearing things online about. Obviously, 6 months ago they stopped doing pre-owned, and now apparently you can't pre-order games to pick them up in store. They'll direct you to the website, and then they're sent to you, and it's become a sort of a different experience now going into the shop, and I was generally,
that's right.
I was a little bit sad, and from their point of view, they're probably going, well, guys, look, hold on, we got to pay our staff, we got to pay our rent, and no one's buying video games. So I don't necessarily want to blame Game, but it's quite sad, I think.
Yeah, I think everyone's predicted that it's going to be probably 4 or 5 years ago. People were predicting that they were going to go bust, and they somehow have survived. I think it will disappear eventually. It's sad in a way because people, kids growing up now, and we're going to fall into that trap of back in my day talk. But it was exciting when you were a kid to go into an electronics boutique. For me in those days, or like your shop. Back in the day, Play Nation Games, or whatever indie shop was your local back then, and find and see new video games, to be able to pick up the boxes and read them and look at the back, and the kiosks that would be set up where you could play the new games and chatting to the staff about the new games. That stuff was really exciting, and it's become a bit of a meme, but sitting in either your parents' car or on the train or on the bus home, being really excited to play the new game that you've got. That was that whole package of going to a physical place to pick up a game, and it's rapidly becoming now that buying digitally is becoming more and more mainstream. It has been on PC for a long time. We've talked about that before, but certainly in the console space, it's becoming more and more normal. Most of my Switch games are probably the digital now. I've got a ton of physical ones as well, but they actually have pretty good sales, and they have pretty good discounts and stuff like that. It's getting a better and better option, and that makes the physical store a bit less viable than it otherwise would be. And Game were kind of the last big chain dedicated video game store. CEX are really kind of they've basically taken over now. They've basically ceded everything to CEX. They're getting rid of second-hand stuff, aren't they? I think Game, which is kind of their bread and butter, really.
So when I was in Game, they had, which was probably about 3-4 weeks ago, but there was a big sign, 90% off all pre-owned, and there must have been about 7 games there. So they've completely just got rid of it all, and it was. I don't always want to buy sort of new games. I like going through pre-owned games, and I almost think it's for me. It's like a little bit of an end of an era, really. And it's not the same. I'm here on my PC, and on to the right, on my second monitor, I've got the Steam store, and it's not quite the same as going through the Steam store, and you probably get more information. You get reviews on there. You get little videos of the game. So it's actually better. Yeah. But it still hasn't got that same feeling of, trying to find a bargain or having
I don't really get the I don't really get the impression that people are really going to mourn it. I mean, more when I read like Eurogamer or something have a news article about Game are stopping this or they're not doing that anymore. There'll be, the inevitable comments of people, probably, Gen Xers that read the site or millennials that read it, sort of people around our age. They'll initially talk about what I've just said, like, wasn't it exciting going to the shop when you're a kid and getting the game? But at the same time, they're not going to be like, I really hope Game survives. Everyone's kind of, I don't know about, obviously it's very sad for the people that work there that might be made redundant. We don't want that to happen. Yeah. I don't think anybody's really going to miss them. And to be honest, there'll be games available. CEX, I think, is going to be around. I don't think they've ever got any trouble in terms of finances. They're going to fill that void if they're not already. Most of my video game purchases have been when it's been a physical going into a store. I would say all of them in the last decade have been from CEX, really. I don't often buy brand new games. If I do, it's going to be from Amazon, and it's normally just for the Switch. Really, it's the only console that I buy physical for, and has been for a long time. The only other platform that I play on really these days is the PC, and I've been buying digital games on that since for the last 10 years. It's been fairly normal on PC for digital to be the standard for a long time now. So yeah, I'm not really going to miss it. And in terms of what they do now in Funko Pops and cool toys and like nerd sort of merch, there's other shops that do that better. Really, I mean, we had one during our warm up before we actually started recording. We compared what they're trying to do to Forbidden Planet and places like Mankind and other places that sell, HMV do it now as well, and I think even they do it better. Things that sell kind of those sort of nerd
I think
kind of merchandise.
The nail on the head there. And it's funny you say HMV, because I think what's the other shop? FOPP.
Yeah.
I was in London the other week, and I was I think my girlfriend went off to do something else, and I said, I'll have a look in this FOP shop, and it was just full of DVDs. Or I went downstairs, and that was full of DVDs, and they had all these. They'd like an international section. They had, and it felt like I was actually in there. I'm thinking, okay, some of these DVDs are £10-15 each, or they're not, but they had such a wide variety of really sort of niche films and old sort of films that they were really well curated, and that'll be something like, and no one's ever going to do this, but if they came back and like reprinted copies of games on the PS2 and copies of games on the original Xbox or 360 games, or Game Boy, not Game Boy games, but DS games, or even Game Boy games as well. They had them there, like they're almost.
There is a little bit of that, isn't there? There are some companies that like limited run. I think have like reprinted.
Yeah, I was about to say,
and
limited run, and so actually,
it'd be nice if that stuff was a bit wider, range, and you could get it in, or you could go into a shop and get it. All this stuff is very much online, but it would be great if it was more common. Like FOP has these old films and things like that. Yeah,
and again, HMV. You go into a HMV store, and they're almost. I think there's a small article, maybe on the BBC, that going. Well, actually, going back to doing DVDs, we're actually doing really well, because they've made their shops smaller. They do lots of vinyl. They do CDs that people want to buy, and they do sort of DVDs. And some people they don't want to watch something through a streaming service. That they want to have it as a physical Blu-ray in a nice box that's. It tells a story that comes with a booklet which has all the behind the scenes images on, and they don't mind paying sort of £30 for that, for a show that they really, really enjoy. And
it's interesting that seems to be a much bigger market than people wanting physical games, I guess. So there hasn't been. Maybe in another 10 years, when physical video game media is kind of completely dead on consoles, maybe there will be like a comeback that will happen 5 years after that, like vinyl, where all of a sudden, there's boutique places making physical copies of. I don't know what that would look if a console doesn't have an optical drive, but maybe it'll make a comeback. But yeah, it's hard to say why it's kind of treated differently with the sort of video game realm versus films and TV and music. Yeah.
I've actually just found the article from the 22nd of July, so 3 days ago. HMV boss says DVD and Blu-ray sales are back in growth despite streaming boom. So have been declining for years, but HMV says the physical format is making a comeback as people look to own copies of their favourite TV shows and films. And actually, that's the nail on the head, because if you want to watch, let's say the Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2. Over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've enjoyed watching those, and they're on Netflix. But in 3 months, in 6 months, they might not be on Netflix anymore. They've left, and then you're like, hold on, how do I watch it now? I don't want to go down the illegally streaming it, piracy, and I might not want to, spend $7.99 to download it or rent it from the Apple Store, because I really want to watch. It's a film I want to own. I want to give something back to the people that made it. So I think there's certainly sort of something to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to game, the only real people I think that will have a huge impact, not that they really are aware of it or might even be bothered about it, but it's kind of those sort of grandparents and parents that don't really know about video games, and they're just buying stuff for their kids for Christmas and birthday. I think they're probably the biggest customers, right now, maybe. So somewhere like Game, they're like, I go to the Game is the video game shop. That's where I go and get the game that my kid wants for their video game console. Really, I would find it hard to believe that someone of our generation who would have completely existed within video games being a thing wouldn't be aware that there are other ways of getting them. But you can go into a supermarket and they often have the top 10 of pretty much every system. And I think that's what, if Game goes, I don't think there'll really be. There are already concessions, like you say, in Sports Directs. They've only got to get rid of the Game branding and just say this is the Sports Direct video game thing. And it could just be a gondola, really, couldn't it, in those shops of just like the top 10 games for each console. You don't really need the Game branding anymore. Tesco and Sainsbury's can over to sell video games and make a big song and dance about it.
They don't even do it anymore, though.
Have they stopped as well? I'm pretty sure last time I went in Tesco I saw games, but
maybe they do a little bit. But
they've probably definitely gone down. It's probably more on the vouchers now, isn't it? Can't imagine the margins are very good on the vouchers, but
But what
I don't think it will really be a big impact, unfortunately, when they eventually do go. Very sad for the people that will be made redundant, but I think almost it's been a slow kind of death march, isn't it, over 3 or 4 years. I thought COVID would have been near the final nail, but it somehow survived it, really. Or has it? I guess if it's already these concessions. I think the only place you see a genuine game store now is in a shopping centre, isn't it, really? Like Westfield or somewhere like that is the only place where there's a genuine dedicated shop. But will you be bothered about it when they eventually go and it's official?
I think I will, but I'll be more bothered that it was. I think I missed the game from 10 years ago. That's what I miss. I don't miss the game of 2024, but I'll probably miss a game of 2014 when you go in there and huge amounts of pre-owned and things like that. They got all the special editions in, and that was obviously it was really good. But this hits on sort of another sort of topic, really. But
before we do jump to something else. One final thing to wrap up the game RIP sort of bit. You owned a shop, for a long time that was, somewhere where there was game stores. Was it a big issue with competition with them? Or did you ever really, was it a battle with them, or did you not really worry about them when you were sort of next door to them?
No, but the way I always sort of saw it is that having other video game stores sort of close by, it more brought people in to go, let's go to Croydon, there's a CX, there's a game, Play Nation games as well, and I thought it was more positive sort of thing. And you know, I think we always focus more on. I mean, our niche was sort of the retro side of things, and that wasn't something the game did. So, from our point of view, you know, we classed ourselves as, you know, retro sort of experts, and you know, all the big sales that we got were from, you know, large sort of collectors who would come in, and you know, they would reserve a game that we put on Facebook or YouTube, and they'll come in a few days later and you know, buy that game, and that was sort of our niche. But I'd you know, I think if we'd went down the route of, okay, we're only going to do, you know, brand new games, and life would have been a lot harder. So it wasn't really
just do the trick that a lot of places do, and just buy the Amazon copy and sell that to the customer. that was the thing that a lot of these places did.
Potentially. Yeah, some of the games that were cheaper from Amazon than from the distributor. So
yeah, exactly. Don't blame people for doing that.
Yeah, no, exactly. What I was going to mention was obviously the Xbox Game Pass price increase, and obviously I don't think either of us want a price increase. But then the way they're sort of talking at the moment of saying things like, "Oh, well, you can play Xbox without having a console." You know, and obviously they're saying you can play it on the PC, you can play it on a through what's it, xCloud, Amazon Sticks. You know, download the app on there. But I think that's it's almost a little bit defeatist, I think. And
I think so,
admit, playing Xbox, it's best on an Xbox console, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get where they're coming from. It's, you know, we want if we have like Xbox sort of the Xbox ecosystem available on as many devices as possible, then we'll have more people playing Xbox, basically. But there's other things that kind of take a hit on with that. I mean, the big one that we thought about before we started recording again, we were warming up. How does that affect like Xbox from a marketing standpoint? I don't mean just what their adverts are saying. You know, you don't need an Xbox to play Xbox, but in terms of literally on the high street, I mean, if you're really only going to be, you know, telling people to buy a Fire Stick to play the xCloud, or just download the app on your PC or whatever, and to the point where maybe you'll just have the Xbox consoles and then just a bunch of vouchers. I mean, someone walking into, well, maybe there won't be a shop that people would walk into, but that would also affect how it would look in like a CEX. I mean, you'd be walking into shops that will just have, you know, a bare minimum of Xbox stuff, because there just isn't things to sell really, because they're not looking for people to buy physical games anymore, versus, you know, entire sections of PS5 or 6 in the future, and Switch 2 that'll have entire like gondolas filled with games and stuff. I mean, surely that's going to have a negative impact on just how, you know, the mind share is probably the word I'm looking for. Because there's not going to, they won't have that physical presence, because they're just not, they're not selling physical hardware in high volumes.
Well, let's flip that the other way. But what if you've got an Amazon or Fire Stick, and you know, you turn it on, and then in the middle is Xbox, you know, click here to play. So you click on it, and you know, you might link up an old Xbox controller you might have over Bluetooth, and you're thinking, hold on, I'm playing Xbox here. And it's just that, you know, I'm almost, you know, I don't like it's a great option to have as well, but I think for me, the performance always seems so much better playing on a console or playing sort of Xbox through a PC, as in, you know, an actual PC game on there. So, I still think they're hoping that they'll have a big sort of banner on, you know, on Google Chrome and stuff like that. So and it will come out on lots of TVs, that you just, you know, Bluetooth up a controller that you buy for 40 quid or whatever, and then sign up for an xCloud account, which might be £7 a month, and then you can play these 500 games and have them streamed. And I think that's got something about it. That's a positive thing, but I still just I can't imagine it'd be a great experience of with like lag and issues like that. I don't know. What's your would you be, if you didn't have an Xbox and that advert popped up, would you investigate it?
Streaming still isn't like a viable like replacement for having a console, that you're playing with.
It's not, is it?
It's so reliant on so many things to be perfect, like a good internet connection, right where you're sat in your house or flat, and then how close are you away from where you're getting that internet connection from? How are they doing in terms of the quality of the internet signal? Or the quality of the internet, how are Microsoft doing with their servers? Are they doing well at that particular point in time? There's so many factors that are adding lag upon lag upon lag upon quality issue upon quality issue before it even gets to your screen to register your controller inputs. It's just far too, unreliable really for that. I mean, I've had some good experiences with it. I feel like, maybe 60% of the time I have a good experience, but not to the point where I would... unless that would have to be like 99% really, for you to seriously consider, well, I can just drop, my console now. That's also, that doesn't cover you for when you're out. Okay, I know there's pretty good mobile 5G, but what if you're on a holiday and you want a better game? You still probably would need a physical device of some kind, whether it's a Switch or a Steam Deck.
So you couldn't go to a hotel and think, I'm going to get a good quality internet connection here, and do some gaming. You couldn't do it when you're on the bus. You couldn't do it when you're on the train. Wherever you go, if you're thinking, I'm going to fully rely on streaming, and I think people have almost got to give up on the idea, because you've had on Live, and they weren't a big company. Then you've had Google attempt it and fail. You had Microsoft going at it, and there people are still the performance isn't great. PlayStation, people have got the Portal and they're not superly the John Lillemans of the world. Thinks it's a terrible product, and then some people seem to really love it. And the only one, this is from John Lillemans from Digital Foundry, is the the Nvidia, what's it called?
Shield,
Nvidia, the Shield online sort of service. They got their stream service, and he's actually very positive about that one. So but the fact that Microsoft, with all the money they've got behind them, and that they can't do a suitable service, and I've tried streaming on my Mac and playing sort of Forza Motorsport, and it just felt like you'll turn right. You had to predict everything you needed to do half a second, or not half a second, but 20 frames.
You can really feel the
frames.
Lag. Yeah,
you can feel the lag, and it's just like, I don't like this. This isn't good. This isn't a great experience.
I can see a future where streaming of a game will replace having a physical console, but I think we're a long way off. I mean, some people are saying, in 10 years it'll be no, I don't think it's way beyond that. I think you're looking at 50 or 60 years, because there's countries that are lagging far behind on their internet, and they won't be able to, support a streaming only gaming, system. For a long time, even up to the level that we have here in this country, in London, different parts of the country we're in have terrible internet. People that live on some kind of, the Outer Hebrides aren't going to be able to use xCloud, So, it's. I think they're going to market it, and I think it's important that they do, have it, and it's there for people to use, and it will get better. But putting all their eggs in that basket right now, I think is a bad move. I think they need to support a physical console and physical games, and I think they will, but they just need to, really actually tell people that we still want you to buy a console and buy physical games, especially if they're supposedly bringing out a handheld, which isn't going to be a portal. It will be sort of more like a Steam Deck, and actually, probably where you better download your Game Pass games and buy games, of course. I don't think there'd be any way for you to sort of transfer your disc games on, into a digital purchase to be able to play them on the portal, the Xbox portal, on the handheld Xbox. Maybe they'll come up with something. Sony were never able to figure that out with the PSP Go when they were trying to, say, oh yeah, don't worry, people have UMDs on their PSP original. We'll find a way for them to play those as digital versions on like a Go, which didn't have a UMD drive. I remember that being a thing.
It's
so
the Xbox was it called the portable Xbox or whatever it's going to be called. I'm really quite excited about that. I think that'd be a really good sort of proposition. And I'm quoting Digital Foundry again, but I think it's got to be in the price realms of the Steam Deck, not the ROG Ally or the Legion Go something. Yeah, that's where it's got to sit, and they've got to get the performance and everything right on it. So all the games on Game Pass will work on day one. So it's almost like a Game Pass machine, and then you can buy other games, because the issue that it's almost got to be a cut down version of Windows, isn't it? So
I think it just needs to be a Series S. Just make a Series S. If there's a way they can squish that down into a handheld, which they might be able to, and it might actually be what they're doing as we speak, that'll be perfect. Doesn't have to be. I don't think it should be Windows based. I think it should be an Xbox, and it should just be a handheld Series S. And maybe going forward into the future, instead of having a low spec, console that plugs into the TV and then a high spec version, I think they should just have the high spec, and then the low spec is a handheld, and that should be the two: a handheld and you can plug the handheld into the TV, and use it as a regular console like a Switch. I think the Switch has meant that that's kind of a thing you have to have in a handheld now, being able to connect it to a TV when you want to. I think that's a door that you can't close ever again. But I'm really excited about it. I'll totally pre-order it when it gets revealed, because I think especially if you've got Game Pass, to be able to play all those games.
That'd be brilliant.
Not through xCloud, not in some kind of having to get the PC version working on a ROG Ally, which is an absolute pain with the Windows Store and all that jankiness. Will be really, really cool. And I'll be like a day one for me, because I love handheld systems. It'd probably bring me back into playing, an Xbox console again, really, because I've got no desire to buy any of the Xbox or PS5 at this point in time. So that'll really be a winner for me. I mean, if Sony changed their mind and made, a Vita 2 that was basically a small PS5, I would buy that. I would buy anything that was a good quality handheld. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there we go. So that's our thoughts on game and going bust, maybe, or slowly doing it. What's happening with the Xbox brand and ODEs. But Stu, if these people want to get in touch with us and tell us we're wrong, what would be the best way for them to do that?
You can always tell us we're wrong on Twitter or X. You can tell us we're wrong on the YouTube channel. You can put a comment on there telling us how wrong we are. And then on Facebook, you can tell us we're also wrong on there. And then you can listen to us and put a review telling us how wrong we are on any of the big podcast clients, such as Apple, Google, Spotify. I think Stitcher's gone now. I think Stitcher's gone.
Yeah.
So we're not on Stitcher.
Right, Stitcher, yeah. Okay. Well, we're on all the other stuff, so hopefully that will cover us anyway. But thanks, everybody, as always, for listening to the latest episode, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care.
Take it easy, buddy. Bye-bye.